In the heart of a storm-lashed night, deep within the treacherous forests of Dacia, a lone figure spurred his horse onward. Rain fell in blinding sheets, turning the ancient pathways into treacherous rivers of mud. Each crack of lightning illuminated a scene of chaos, the glint of steel, the desperate cries of men, and the shadowy forms of warriors locked in a struggle to the death. The air, thick with the scent of pine and blood, carried the weight of an empire's ambition and a kingdom's last stand. A rider, his face a mask of grim determination, pushed through the fray, his eyes fixed on the distant flicker of torches high in the mountain fortress ahead. This was no mere skirmish. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance on this night of fire and steel. For one side, it was the culmination of a relentless march of conquest, a final push to bring the known world under the shadow of a single eagle standard. For the other, it was a desperate final defense of their ancestral lands, their sacred traditions, and their very existence. At stake was not just territory, but a treasure of unimaginable proportions, a legendary hoard of gold said to be vast enough to remake the fortunes of an entire empire, or to fund a resistance that could last for generations. At the center of this maelstrom was a man whose name was spoken in hushed, fearful tones in the taverns of Rome, and sung with defiant pride around the campfires of Dacia. He was Decebalus, the king of the Dacians, a warrior of immense courage and a brilliant strategist. He had united the disparate tribes of his land into a formidable force that had defied the might of Rome for years. Now cornered in his mountain capital of Sarmizegetusa, he prepared to make his final, desperate gambit against the most powerful military machine the world had ever known. As the Roman legions, relentless in discipline, tightened their siege, a critical question echoed through the storm. Could one man's will, fueled by the love of his people and the wealth of his land, truly defy the inexorable power of an empire at its absolute zenith? Was the legendary cunning of the Dacian king enough to turn back the tide of conquest, or would his kingdom and its fabled treasure be swallowed whole by the voracious appetite of Rome? The answer would come not on the battlefield, but in an act of ultimate defiance. As the outer walls of his fortress crumbled, Decebalus, seeing all was lost, chose his own end. Rather than face the humiliation of capture and be paraded through the streets of Rome, he took his own life. His death marked the end of Dacian independence. The Romans, led by their emperor, swarmed into the fallen capital, but the ultimate prize, the great hoard of gold, remained elusive, sparking a frantic, desperate search that would uncover a secret of incredible ingenuity. History is not merely a record of battles won and lost. It is a tapestry woven from the threads of desperate choices, cunning secrets, and the enduring quest for power. Our story begins not in the mud and rain of that final battle, but in the gleaming marble halls of Rome, a city drunk on its own power. The year is 101 AD, and the empire is under the steady hand of a new leader, Marcus Ulpius Trajanus, known to history as Trajan. A soldier by trade and an emperor by circumstance, Trajan inherited an empire that, while vast, faced simmering threats on its frontiers. The treasury was strained, and the people of Rome, accustomed to bread and circuses, were a restless beast that always needed feeding. Far to the northeast, beyond the great river Danube, lay the kingdom of Dacia, a land shrouded in mist and mystery. The Romans viewed the Dacians as barbarians, a wild and unpredictable people. But they were also aware of the whispers, the tantalizing rumors of mountains filled with gold and silver. For decades, Dacia had been a thorn in Rome's side, launching raids across the Danube, a constant and irritating reminder that the empire's power was not absolute. These were not disorganized tribes, but a unified kingdom under a formidable leader. King Decebalus was a figure of legend among his own people. He was not a king by birthright, but had risen through the ranks by his sheer military genius and unwavering will. He understood the Romans, their tactics, and their relentless ambition. He had fought them before, battling Trajan's predecessor, Domitian, to a standstill, securing a peace treaty that was, for Rome, a humiliating compromise. The treaty involved Rome paying subsidies to Dacia, essentially funding the very enemy that threatened its border. For a proud emperor like Trajan, this was an intolerable insult. Trajan was a man of immense ambition, driven by a desire to secure his legacy and enrich his empire. He saw in Dacia not just a threat to be neutralized, but an opportunity of immense proportions. The Dacian gold was more than a rumor, it was a strategic imperative. Conquering Dacia would not only eliminate a dangerous foe and secure the Danube frontier, but it would also flood the Roman treasury with a fortune that could fund his grand building projects and secure the loyalty of his legions for decades to come. The stage was set for a clash of titans. The First War began with a feat of Roman engineering that was itself a declaration of intent. Trajan commissioned his brilliant architect, Apollodorus of Damascus, to construct a massive bridge across the formidable Danube River. This was no temporary pontoon structure, but a colossal stone bridge, a permanent artery into the heart of the enemy's territory. It was a message to Decebalus: Rome was not here for a raid, they were here to stay. The bridge allowed legions to pour into Dacia, a steady, unstoppable river of iron and discipline. Decebalus was no fool. He knew he could not defeat the full might of the Roman legions in a pitched battle. His strategy was one of defense, of using the harsh, unforgiving terrain of Dacia to his advantage. The Dacian heartland was a fortress of mountains and dense forests. He would lure the Romans in, stretch their supply lines, and bleed them with guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and lightning raids. He would make them pay for every inch of Dacian soil in blood, hoping to wear down their resolve. The first campaign was a brutal and bloody affair. The Romans, under Trajan's direct command, pushed relentlessly forward. They were met with ferocious resistance. The Dacians, fighting for their homes, were fierce and unyielding. The Battle of Tapi was a brutal clash that resulted in a Roman victory, but at a heavy cost. Trajan, seeing the number of his wounded, was said to have torn his own robes to provide bandages. It was a testament to the ferocity of the Dacian warriors and the resolve of their king. Despite his tactical victories, Trajan could not land a decisive blow. The Dacian fortress capital, Sarmizegetusa, nestled high in the Oresti Mountains, remained impregnable. As winter approached, the Roman supply lines were stretched thin, and the prospect of a long, drawn-out war in the harsh Dacian mountains was unappealing. Decebalus, his forces battered but not broken, sued for peace. Trajan, ever the pragmatist, agreed, but the terms were harsh. Decebalus had to cede territory and dismantle some of his fortresses. The peace was never meant to last. For Trajan, it was a strategic pause, a chance to regroup and reinforce. For Decebalus, it was a humiliation he could not endure. He immediately began to secretly rearm, rebuild his fortresses, and forge alliances with neighboring tribes, preparing for the inevitable second round. He knew that Rome's ambition was insatiable, and that Trajan would return. The interlude was but a quiet breath before the storm's return, a period of simmering tension where both sides plotted their next moves in the deadly game for control of the region. Trajan, well informed by his network of spies, was fully aware of Decebalus's defiance. In 105 AD, he declared the peace treaty void and launched a second, even larger invasion. This time, there would be no negotiated settlement. The objective was clear and absolute: the complete annihilation of the Dacian kingdom and the absorption of its lands and wealth into the Roman Empire. The legions once again crossed Apollodorus's magnificent bridge, their determination forged in the fires of the First War and fueled by the promise of untold riches. The Second War was a campaign of systematic conquest. The Romans advanced on multiple fronts, their strategy being to surround and isolate the Dacian strongholds in the mountains. They built roads, constructed forts, and brought the full weight of their siege engineering to bear. The fighting was even more desperate than before. The Dacians, knowing this was a war for survival, fought with the courage of cornered wolves. But the relentless, methodical advance of the Roman legions was impossible to halt. One by one, the Dacian mountain fortresses fell. The Romans patiently and expertly laid siege to each stronghold, cutting off supplies and bombarding the defenders with their powerful artillery. The scenes depicted on Trajan's column in Rome, a monumental victory monument, show the brutal reality of the war. Desperate battles on fortress walls, Roman soldiers storming defenses, and the grim aftermath of conquest. The intricate carvings tell a story of engineering prowess, disciplined warfare, and the systematic dismantling of a kingdom. The climax of the war was the final siege of Sarmizegetusa. The Dacian capital was a marvel of defensive architecture, a complex of sanctuaries and fortifications built to withstand any assault. For weeks, the Romans battered at its walls. The defenders, led by Decebalus himself, repelled wave after wave of attacks. But the Romans had a crucial advantage: an insider. A Dacian nobleman, betraying his king, revealed the location of a hidden aqueduct that supplied the city with water. The Romans cut it, sealing the capital's fate. With their water supply severed and no hope of relief, the city's fall was imminent. In a final, desperate act, some of the Dacian nobility, rather than face capture, gathered for a last feast and committed mass suicide by drinking poison. It was a horrifying testament to their desire to remain free from Roman rule. Decebalus, however, managed to escape the city with a small contingent of loyal followers, slipping through the Roman lines into the surrounding wilderness, hoping to rally a new resistance. The hunt for the fugitive king began. Roman cavalry scoured the forests and mountains, determined to capture the man who had defied them for so long. Trajan knew that as long as Decebalus was alive, the spirit of Dacian resistance would not be broken. The chase was relentless. Finally, a Roman cavalry detachment cornered the wounded and exhausted king. The relief on Trajan's column shows the dramatic final moment. Decebalus, seeing no escape, sat beneath a tree and slit his own throat with his curved Dacian sword. With the king dead and the capital in ruins, the war was over. Dacia was officially declared a Roman province. But one great mystery remained: the location of the legendary Dacian treasure. The Romans ransacked the fallen capital and the surrounding fortresses, but the vast quantities of gold and silver that were rumored to exist were nowhere to be found. It seemed that Decebalus had taken the secret of his kingdom's wealth with him to the grave, a final act of defiance from beyond the veil. The search became an obsession for the Roman commanders. Soldiers interrogated prisoners, offering rewards and threatening torture. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A captive Dacian nobleman, a close confidant of the late king named Basilis, finally broke under pressure. He revealed an astonishing secret, a plan so audacious and clever that it had almost succeeded. Decebalus had not buried his treasure in a cave or hidden it in a fortress. He had hidden it in plain sight, yet utterly out of reach. According to the account of the historian Cassius Dio, Decebalus had used Roman prisoners to perform an incredible feat of engineering. He had temporarily diverted the course of the Sarmizegetusa River, which flowed near his capital. In the dry riverbed, his men dug a massive pit. Into this chamber they poured the treasures of the Dacian kingdom: vast quantities of gold coins, silver bullion, sacred artifacts, and precious jewels. Once the vault was filled, it was sealed with stones and earth, and the river was returned to its original course. The river now flowed over the hidden hoard, concealing it perfectly. To ensure the secret remained safe, Decebalus had executed all the prisoners who had worked on the project. It was a ruthless but brilliant plan. The river itself was the guardian of the treasure, its ever-flowing waters a seemingly impenetrable lock. Only a handful of his most trusted nobles, including the now captured Basilis, knew the secret. It was a secret that could have funded a Dacian resurgence for decades. Guided by the traitorous nobleman, the Romans replicated the process. They once again diverted the Sarmizegetusa River. And there, in the muddy riverbed, they found it. The excavation revealed a treasure that exceeded even their wildest expectations. The contemporary accounts speak of hundreds of thousands of pounds of gold and twice that amount in silver. It was a staggering fortune, one of the single largest windfalls in Roman history. The wealth of an entire kingdom, unearthed from its watery grave. The discovery of the treasure had an immediate and profound impact on the Roman Empire. The influx of Dacian gold was so immense that it is said the value of gold throughout the empire dropped significantly. Trajan used the wealth to fund a massive public works program in Rome. He constructed a magnificent new forum, a marketplace, and the famous column that bears his name, its spiraling frieze a permanent record of his victory. The gold of Dacia fueled a golden age for Rome. The Conquest also fundamentally changed Dacia. The Romans initiated a systematic policy of colonization and Romanization. Legionary veterans were given land, and settlers from all over the empire were encouraged to move to the new province. New cities were built, including a new capital, Ulpia Traiana Sarmizegetusa, established near the ruins of the old one. The Latin language and Roman customs gradually took root, blending with the native Dacian culture to create a new Romano-Dacian identity. The legacy of the Dacian Wars is complex and enduring. For Rome, it was a high point of imperial expansion, a military triumph that brought immense wealth and prestige. Trajan was celebrated as Optimus Princeps, the best of emperors, his victory immortalized in stone. The Conquest secured a troublesome frontier and brought a resource-rich province into the imperial fold. The gold of Dacia powered the Roman machine for years, funding armies and building monuments to its own glory. For the Dacians, the wars were a catastrophe that resulted in the loss of their independence and the death of their heroic king. Their culture was irrevocably altered by Roman influence. Yet the story of Decebalus and his fierce resistance became a foundational myth for the future nation of Romania. He is remembered as a national hero, a symbol of courage and the eternal fight for freedom against overwhelming odds. The massive modern rock sculpture of his face carved into a cliff overlooking the Danube is a testament to his enduring legacy. The story of Trajan's conquest and the hidden gold of Decebalus is more than just a tale of war and treasure. It is a story about the clash of two powerful wills, two different worlds. It highlights the incredible engineering prowess of the Romans, their methodical and relentless approach to warfare, and their insatiable hunger for expansion and wealth. It also showcases the ingenuity and fierce determination of the Dacian people to protect their homeland and their way of life. The mystery of the river hoard, with its clever concealment and dramatic discovery, adds a layer of intrigue that has fascinated historians and storytellers for centuries. It speaks to a level of cunning and desperation on the part of Decebalus that is truly remarkable. He was not just a warrior but a protector of his people's legacy, willing to go to extraordinary lengths to keep it out of enemy hands. His plan was almost perfect, undone only by the frailty of human loyalty. In the end, the sheer power and resources of the Roman Empire proved to be insurmountable. But the Dacian Wars were not an easy victory. They were a brutal, hard-fought conflict that tested the limits of Roman military might. The wealth gained from the conquest was immense, but it was paid for with the blood of countless Roman legionaries and Dacian warriors. The gold that enriched Rome was tainted with the sorrow of a conquered kingdom. As we look back through the mists of time, the echoes of this epic conflict still resonate. We see it in the ruins of Roman cities in modern-day Romania, in the Latin roots of the Romanian language, and in the enduring story of a barbarian king who dared to defy it. It is a powerful reminder that history is often shaped by the collision of ambition and resistance, and that beneath the grand narratives of empires lie hidden stories of secrets, sacrifice, and treasures lost and found in the most unexpected of places.